Hi, welcome to another episode of The Ugly Truth, where we speak about and discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly. And on today's episode, there's going to be a lot of ugly and a lot of good. Maybe. So we are here with our lovely, our sexy, our funny Mary, who will be discussing the ugly truth of the NHS in a very diplomatic way.
Very diplomatic.
Yeah, we're not trying to get no one in trouble. However, we will also be talking about fillers, Botox, ducks.
Ducks?
Yeah, duck lips.
Oh. I had a client once that she said she used to go to work and people used to throw bread at her.
Yeah, I don't blame her. What did she do? Look like a duck?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Can I just say, I dissolved and refilled.
Yes.
I dissolved and refilled.
But we'll talk about that. Right, so this is Mary. Mary, introduce yourself. What do you do, my darling?
So my name is Mary. I'm an aesthetic practitioner from Essex. I've been a nurse for, since 2013. I started training in 2010, qualified in 2013. I left the NHS 2 years ago. 2 years ago, and have solely been focusing on aesthetics since. I'm a mum of two. I have no work-life balance because I'm either at work with my child, I go to work to get away from my child, and I spend time with my child to get away from work. There's no balance here whatsoever. So that's a little bit about me. I've had my aesthetic company for 7 years.
And what that means is you actually have your own clinic.
Yes, I have a home clinic. I also do satellite clinics from other places, and I'm a nurse prescriber, so I also prescribe for other practitioners in the industry. Can I add both medic and non-medic? And I'm fully insured to do so. But that is a whole nother topic.
We will get into what that actually means, because those that don't know what that means, because I don't, because she just spoke a whole nother language to me. I don't know what you do who who that is a thing. Prescribing is a thing. Anyway,
prescribing is a thing.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so we'll get into that.
Yeah. Where do we begin? So tell me about, you said balance life. How many kids do you have? What's going on? So
how old?
Got my two kids. We'll start with the kids, because the kids actually evolve quite nicely into a topic on the NHS. So like I said, I was in the NHS for a very long time. Before we have any conversation about the NHS, one thing I need to say is I had an incredible career in the NHS. I have seen things, I have learnt things, and I have been around the most incredible people that you have ever met in your whole entire life, whether that be nurses or patients. However, I ended up leaving the NHS for personal reasons that we'll come into, and a lot when it comes to the NHS is that actually the NHS is a people service. So the NHS itself it works because of the people that's in it, and it doesn't work because of the people that's in it. But we'll talk about the kids first, and then we'll come to that.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
What?
I know.
Okay.
You said half hour. I think we're going to need a bit more time.
I think we're going to need a little bit more time for this one. I don't think this is a half an hour, 20-minute show.
No.
So, oh God, she just said a lot. Right, come on, let's go. What?
Okay.
Right, okay. I'm just. It's not often I'm speechless. However, I think in this episode I'm going to be speechless a few times.
A couple.
So the NHS is great because of the people. However, it's not great because of the people that are in it.
People. That's it. That's amazing.
That is the now. Right, we're gonna come back to that.
We're gonna come back to that.
Right. So kids,
but kids. So I have got two beautiful children. I have Emery. That is the light of my life. He is 2 years old. He is everything. He is hilarious,
and he's so cute.
He's really, really cute. I'm very biased. So he is 2, and I have Manny, who would have been 4 this year. Manny was born in 2019, and he was born still, which means that basically he was born with no heartbeat. He didn't breathe, he didn't open his eyes, he didn't do anything like that. So that's Manny. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, it's part of life, isn't it? I love speaking about my kids, dead or alive. I think I talk about my son Emery all day, every day. So what's the difference? I can speak about Manny as if he was still here. Mm-hmm. And even though it's been 4 years, I'm probably more bitter now than I was 4 years ago. I find
Why is that?
It's a real techie one. Like, it's so techie. As a parent, when your child isn't here, you can't fight for them. And so every day, every part of my life is fighting to make sure that everything Emery has is the best. As a parent, you constantly are fighting. You're fighting to make sure they get good nutrition, that they are well-rounded, that they're well-behaved, that they're all of these things. And I can't do that for Manny. So now I'm 4 years in and people say, oh, yeah, but it's been 4 years. And I'm like, yeah, but it's only been 4 years. So if you want to go into it, we'll go into a little bit about what happened.
Please do.
But,
well, this is the ugly. This is the ugly truth.
The ugly truth.
So let's get to it. Yeah,
let's get to it. So Manny was born on the 13th of October. He was a beautiful £9.6, and Manny was born after the most incredible pregnancy. Let me tell you, the most incredible pregnancy. So he was born, I was 41 plus 1. So I was...
What does that mean?
So your normal gestation, so when you have a baby, you normally get to 40 weeks.
Right.
I was well over.
Okay.
I was well over. And throughout my whole pregnancy, it was amazing. I've never felt so sexy in my whole entire life.
Wow.
Never.
You've never heard that one before?
Never felt so sexy in my whole entire life. It's the one time in your life that you can be sitting there with a big belly eating a cheeseburger and no one can say anything to you. No one can say nothing.
Well, that's a good way of looking at it.
Literally loved it. And we had some really incredible memories that me and my little boy, we went around the world. We travelled, we did all sorts. And just,
oh God.
Because just because he was in my belly doesn't mean he wasn't doing those things with me.
Yeah.
And people always say, yeah, but he didn't breathe, he didn't sit. He did all of that through me. I didn't sit there and say, Manny, it's time to kick now. He did that off his own back. So my ideology of what pregnancy and what life is like as a parent completely changed after I had Manny, because I realised that, and actually my dad wrote it in a card for me on Mother's Day one day. He said, once a mum, always a mum. And from the minute you start growing that baby, that's it. That's motherhood. You're in it. You're not like a little tiptoe in. Your foot is well and truly established in that door.
Yeah.
So with Manny, I fell pregnant, had this incredible pregnancy, but there was a few signs that things weren't quite right.
Okay.
But I'll tell you this as a mother, not as a nurse. This was my first pregnancy. I'm a nurse that looks after adults. And there's a big difference between nurses that look after adults and that who look after children. You don't really cross boundaries, like very rarely. So you could come up to me with a child that's unwell and I don't have a clue. It's not my speciality. Give me an adult, perfect. But children, babies, that's not my forte.
Okay. Whereas to me, I just thought that was the same thing.
Yeah, and most people do. Most people go, right, you're a nurse, that's it, you know everything. No, we don't. And actually that comes a little bit into aesthetics. Because you will,
let's
Yeah.
one thing at a time. One thing at a time. Go on.
So I had this really incredible pregnancy, but now when I look back, there were telltale signs that things weren't right.
Right.
But the problem was I never saw the same person. So I'd go to the hospital, I'd go to my appointments, and I always saw a different professional.
Okay, so what, a different nurse, a different midwife?
Different nurse, different midwife, different doctor. I always saw somebody different. No, it was never the same face.
Are you supposed to see the same person?
In theory, like old school medicine, your GP, everybody knew your GP because it was one person and he looked after the whole village.
Right.
It was continuity of care. So continuity of care means like consistency in care. And so if, say, for example, you say with your clients, etc., you become familiarised to them.
Yeah.
So if you are not seeing the same person every time, they're not familiar with you. They don't know you. They don't know the warning signs. And so there was a lot of warning signs that were missed. In my opinion, as a parent, my son died due to medical negligence. And and so as a nurse, to accept that was really difficult.
That just gave me goosebumps. That just gave me goosebumps. So
the problem with that is that stillborns are not considered a life, right? A stillborn or my son, my friend Rosie would kill me for repeatedly saying the word stillborn. She hates that. My son is not considered a life. My son had 10 fingers, he had 10 toes. he has a death certificate, he has a grave. I held him for 2 days.
And it's not classed as...
Not classed as a life. So
I don't understand that, but it is a life.
But it is a life because he has a place in this world. He's on registers. Because he was born after a certain period of time, he is considered a human being.
I was about to say that, yeah.
Anywhere else in the world, apart from England, stillborns are considered as a life. So, for example, if you have a stillborn in
Germany,
or I'm not sure, but any other country
but
but England, it's investigated by coroners. It's investigated as like a serious incident.
Wow.
It's only in England that they're not. So,
and yet this is not even spoken about. Because where do we even hear this?
you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. And I guess that coroners' workloads are really high, and there's people that try and change this law all the time. But it meant that my son's death was never investigated. And the reason being is still that babies that are born sleeping are investigated if they meet a certain criteria. But that criteria is very flippant. So
when you say sleeping, as in...
like born dead.
Oh, born dead. Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
so if a baby's... It's literal, isn't it? Like, I've always said if I was to ever write a book, the title of my book would be The Girl That Gave Birth to Death, because that's what I did. When I gave birth...
That's actually quite deep.
Mate.
Sorry, that just gave me...
I know, you'd buy my book, couldn't you?
Yeah, can we just have a minute? I need some tissue, something like what? Sorry, I know that we're laughing and smiling about it, but it's really not...
I talk about this all the time. Because
yeah, no, I understand, yeah.
To me, this is part of my life. And talking about business... I went back to work a month after my son died. It's the busiest I've ever been. The busiest. My clinic was heaving. And purely, I used to call it terror tourism. People just wanted to see me and be like, I've seen her. She's all right. Kind of thing.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I had incredible support, but I digress. Yeah, so his life is not considered as to have ever existed, even though, like I said, I've got a grave, I've got all of these things. Therefore, it was never investigated. So,
do you know what the cause?
Yes.
Did we go down the legal? Well,
yes, I do, and yes, I don't. So like I said, incredible pregnancy, but there were some telltale signs of things that weren't correct. Right. I'll tell you a little bit about my labour as well, but things that were missed was my blood pressure was really high.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to sneeze?
So, no, yeah, I'm going to sneeze. I wanted to sneeze then. I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm all right. I was like, how do you stop? How do you stop
the sneeze? Do you know, to stop a sneeze, if you shout pineapple at someone who's about to sneeze, it will stop them sneezing.
Can we try that again when it happens?
Okay,
just shout out pineapple at me.
When I'm in clinic, if someone's about to sneeze and I'm doing their lips, I just say the most random words that comes to my head. It is always bald men. Like, I always shout, bald man. And everyone just looks at me like, but my receptionist, she's like, about to sneeze? I'm like, yeah, down there, about to sneeze.
Wow.
It works every time.
Okay, so, yes, and just if you hear her screaming at me about anything weird, she's not having like a weird moment. It's because I'm about to sneeze.
Well, she probably is having a weird moment.
Why?
Oh, gosh.
Go on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Serious topic, but we're laughing in the middle.
I know.
Yeah, go on.
But that's how you got to be. This is how these conversations should be. These shouldn't be taboo conversations.
No.
I have had so many people I have met since I've lost my son that sometimes I feel a bit like the Grim Reaper because everyone just wants to come and tell me about their lives. But it's when you know that someone else has been through something that I guess is a bit of a tragedy, you feel like you can speak to them because there are somebody in the world that they might not understand what you've been through exactly, but they understand what pain is, they understand what grief is, they understand what sorrow is. And so actually it's so nice. And I remember on this topic, I went into work actually not long after I'd had my son and I was chatting away and I saw this nurse. I had known this nurse for years. Years and years. She was like one of my day one nurses. And I remember talking to her and she just went a bit grey and I was like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Is things okay? And she went, I had a stillborn. And I was like,
oh,
what? And she told me her little boy's name. She went, that's the first time I've said his name in 7 years.
Oh, wow.
I went, what? And I talk about my son every day. And she was like, yeah. that's the first time. And when my heart broke for her, because I knew in that moment why she felt like that. You feel like you can't speak about it because it makes other people uneasy.
Yeah, of course.
I'll be honest, I don't care. If you feel uncomfortable talking about my
that's
kids,
your business.
That's your business.
Yeah, that's a you problem. That's not...
Like, I have done things in the past that not to... Like, I have had pictures of my son, Manny, in my clinic, and people have just assumed it's Emery because they look so similar. You can't tell the difference. Yeah. Dead or alive, they look exactly the same. So, like, literally exactly the same. The gene pool there is very, very strong.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a real taboo subject. So yeah.
So did you get into suing the NHS?
So you can't.
What?
You can't.
What do you mean?
I'll tell you.
I'm stuttering because I'm angry. Like, what?
So there was things that were missed. So I had preeclampsia that was missed, which means that I had very high blood pressure. Right. I was like swollen. I couldn't walk from here to that door without getting out of breath. Right. I just put it down to the fact that my baby was big. So I thought he was pushing on my diaphragm that was affecting my lungs. I thought that's why I couldn't breathe properly.
Being the first time pregnant.
Because it was my first time pregnancy. And I also had undiagnosed diabetes. The funny thing is I'd had 2 hypos, which means that my blood sugars had dropped really low.
Oh, wow.
And I had told the hospital and they just didn't look into it. They just went, she's young, she's 28.
Yeah. Okay.
There was no investigations. So on the day that so the week of my labour, I saw a doctor, and me and this doctor, if I ever see him again, we're going to have some very interesting words.
Can we name and shame?
Oh, I wish I could. But he, throughout the whole appointment...
I will find him. And we'll put his name at the comments below. No, we won't. We'll stay professional.
Yeah, we'll keep it professional. Yeah, so on the week of my... I'm about to give birth. Mm-hmm. I saw this doctor. He was more interested in the skirt in the room, basically. There was a junior doctor in the room. There was a midwife in the room. And it was like I weren't really there. He was looking at my cervix. Okay. And to do that, they used hands, talking to a midwife with his hand about her divorce. And I'm laying there like,
oh, wow.
But I've been around doctors. I know what doctors are like. So I didn't really didn't pay any mind to it. I was just like, well,
whatever.
And I was really anemic. So where I was really anemic, there'd been like some back and forth about should I have iron infusions? And he was like, no, she's never going to go into labour naturally. She's going to need to be induced. We can sort that all out next week. Lo and behold, I went into labour naturally and my body went, who lives and who dies? And unfortunately, I'm here. And it's one of those things. I went into labour.
So are you telling me at point of labour it was pick and choose who?
Well, it wasn't. It was natural selection. It's not like there was, I made a decision. So it was my body had to decide what to do. So the Saturday night, I'd had a curry. My son was kicking me all over the place. I remember my nephew's head was here and the baby was like kicking my nephew's head. And we were up till... God knows, all excited. I'm about to give birth. I'm like a couple of days away and my whole life is about to change.
Yeah, of course.
If I knew then, what I knew then, my whole life was really going to change. But my whole life was going to change. The next day I woke up, I'm in labour, I'm sitting at home watching 60 Days In, eating some Raffaellos, like labouring away. And I rang the hospital and they said, has the baby moved? And I was like, no, actually, the baby hasn't moved. They were like, it's all right, you're a first-time mum, have some paracetamol, have a bath. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. So that's what I did. And then I remember my sister come round and we're just eating my Raffaellos and I'm now proper labouring. And she's rang the hospital.
Sorry.
Yeah, have a bath.
I'm still stuck on that part, but yeah.
Have a bath. Well, do you know, up until last year, or this year, I hadn't had a bath. I'd showered.
Yeah. Let's just clarify. She showers from head to toe.
Yeah, I had like a real fear of getting in the bath.
Oh wow!
And it's so strange that how these weird triggers. I could not bath. I had a bath for the first time actually this year. January it was. How weird! I know the last date of my bath.
Yeah. Who remembers the last date?
Yeah, the last date they had a bath. Yeah, so
Mind you, the last time I had a bath, I'm going to be honest, an actual bath will probably been before 2004.
was it? Oh yeah,
because of course I can't get in and out of a bath.
Yes,
well,
of
I can,
course.
but I can't. I choose not to.
Yeah, choose not
the
to.
the fear of my muscles just kind of
Getting
being
stuck.
too relaxed and getting stuck.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about that another day.
Yeah.
Because that's
That's
a whole
a whole
nother, that's
ugly
another.
truth.
Yeah.
That's a whole other.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they just told me to have a bath, and then we rang again, and when we rang again, they kind of said, baby moved. No, they didn't ask me.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't ask me. Sorry, they didn't ask me. And they kind of said, stay at home. And we were like, no, we're coming in. So yeah, we went in, and then it all just went a bit south. It all went a bit south from there. Like, there was, when we got to the hospital, I'm pretty sure I know when he died because my pain changed. But when we got to the hospital, the midwife was trying to find the heartbeat, and she was saying to another midwife, she's moving too much, so I can't find the baby's heartbeat. No, there wasn't a heartbeat. But she was going to her colleague like, she's just moving so much. And after they'd diagnosed like fetal death.
Pineapple.
Sorry.
What?
Just that.
I didn't know if to sneeze, to be in shock.
Yeah.
She. What?
Yeah.
So,
they were
so
dickheads.
you're in.
Sorry, they were actual dickheads. So imagine, I get to the ward.
This is adults only. It's fine.
Yeah.
If kids are listening to this, go to bed.
I got to the ward, and there's this midwife in front of me eating crisps, and I'm labouring. If you could have seen the outfit I was wearing as well, but it's relevant. It's not irrelevant, but I had been, when you walk around a hospital, you see women in labour. Yeah. I was one of them women. I was crawling. I was in so much pain. And yeah, I've got to the desk, and there was an argument because, like I said, no one had ever seen me more than once.
Yeah.
I'd gone from high risk to low risk to high risk to low risk to high risk. So I was under the impression I was high risk. They were under the impression I was low risk. So they just didn't take me seriously.
Right.
So I remember my sister was with me, and she was kind of berating them. She was like, does it matter? Can we get her in a room? So yeah, they've got me in a room. They are checking the baby's heartbeat, and they can't find it. So that's when she's going to get somebody else, and she's like, she's moving so much, we can't find the heartbeat. And then I just realised, they just started to panic. And that's when things started to go a bit south. So anyway.
I'm literally getting angry just listening to this.
Well, I've got another side to it that will, if you think that's bad, that was bad, but I understand they did what they felt was right. Like, I am a 28-year-old that's labouring. They go to work every day. They're not treating you as an individual. They're just treating you like
as just another patient walking in.
Another mum that can't cope with the pain.
Yeah.
After they told me he had died, I'm like...
So did they tell you the baby had passed?
Yeah.
While I
was in labour. While I was labouring. So they had to go and get a doctor.
So I'm just going to try and visualise this. I'm in a room, laying in bed, in pain. Nurse, doctors come over. I don't know how to break the news to you. Your baby stopped. Heartbeat.
So no, they have to be. So as a nurse, you have to be very factual. As a doctor, when you're breaking bad news, you have to be very factual.
Right.
So what they did was, the midwife's gone and done her thing anyway. They've got a doctor, and they have to do an ultrasound, and it has to be diagnosed by ultrasound. And I didn't know this at the time, but I think it has to actually be diagnosed by 2 doctors.
Right.
So there's 2 doctors. They do a ultrasound, and they basically say, we're really sorry, but your baby is dead. Because if they say passed away, or if they say your baby has passed, or your baby's gone, or anything, I might go, gone where? What do you mean it's gone?
Yeah.
Where's it gone?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
They have to.
So it has to be.
It has to be very factual, and
so if it's has to get diagnosed, or not diagnosed, but
tested
by 2 doctors.
Yeah.
What is a doctor's one standing there, and then another one comes along straight after, or is there a time period?
They're in the room together. No,
they're
in the room together.
Because I'm just trying to work out: is there a different, within 10 minutes, could they have just saved?
So
the baby,
in my opinion, so like I said, this criteria, right? So the criteria for babies that are investigated. So my son's death was investigated internally. So the doctors and nurses that worked in the hospital that I gave birth in internally investigated my son's death. So you're looking into the job that your mates have done.
not being funny.
Yeah.
That says it all, doesn't it? Right. Anyway, yeah. Okay.
So the people that are investigating it aren't people that are looking at it with an unbiased mind.
Of course.
So
it's us three basically investigating each other.
Yeah.
Like, how do we cover this up? It's not a, this is what happened. It's, okay, this is what happened, but how are we covering it up?
Yeah, this is what happened, but this is what we're going to say happened.
Yeah.
And actually, I got my notes back. So turning into a nurse, I requested my medical notes and I read them like they were a novel, like back to front, back to front, back to front. And in nursing, we do something called retrospective writing. So retrospective writing is where you write about the event after it's happened because you haven't been able to write about it at the time because there's a lot going on. So you write in retrospect. One of the inserts of documentation was a nurse had written what had happened. Another person has written about their take on what's happened. Then that same nurse has gone back and written again. But hun, you've already written once about what happened.
Why are you writing again?
Why are you writing again in retrospect? And because she wrote the first part when my son was alive. The second part she wrote knowing that my son was dead.
Right.
So the first part, it didn't matter what she wrote because she couldn't get herself in trouble because everything's fine. Everything's hunky-dory. We're about to have a lovely baby.
Yeah.
The second part she's written, in her mind, she's now thinking, have I done enough? Have I done enough? How can I make it look like I've done enough? And I can tell you as a nurse, I have been that person retrospective writing.
I can imagine.
And you, in that moment, even if you think you've done everything, you still sit there and go, did I do everything?
Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah.
Whether he would be alive or not now, there are little things that, and can I just say, there were moments after he passed away, I've always said they turned me back into a human being in their eyes the moment they diagnosed that he had died. So I'd gone from like a cattle shed mum giving birth, just, what's it, on a conveyor belt, to all of a sudden an individual that existed. And
it changed from, are you okay? Are you all right? How can we support you?
How can we help you? There were still processes that, but there was one thing that they did that I don't think I'll ever forget. And I had to go back for a teardrop appointment. It's where they discuss the case. This is like after, it's like 6 months after, and you go with a doctor and they're sitting down with your notes. And this doctor, I felt a bit sorry for her really. It was me and my dad were there, and she expected to see a grieving mother. She didn't get that. She got a very angry nurse that had sat with her medical notes for 6 months.
Yeah.
And
didn't realise
what she had coming in. Yeah. And this doctor actually said to me, she said, you know, it's luck of the doctor on the day. I said, what?
What?
She said, it's luck of the doctor on the day. And that's what I mean by it's a people service. Because
it's the luck of a doctor on the day.
I asked her if I had seen a different doctor at that appointment with that man, would my son be alive today? And she said there is a very high likelihood that he would be. And I said, right. I said, that's all I needed to hear. But you see,
sorry, can we just pause? So you at this point was told, had you been seen by a different doctor, a more qualified one, or more one that took care, or
just anyone that had,
because what's the difference?
Somebody that had brown flakes instead of cornflakes. Anyone.
Someone that had their Snickers instead of their Mars bar.
It could have been a completely different circumstance. Because why is a 28-year-old with no history of medical history that's problematic, that has had a completely unremarkable pregnancy within reason? Like, obviously, I had high blood pressure and etc. But they're all manageable things in pregnancy.
Yeah, of course.
There is no reason for my son to be
these are normal conditions anyway with any...
Yeah.
I say normal. I mean, I don't know. I've never really been pregnant, but I'm saying they're normal.
They're normal everyday things.
Yeah.
And so if it had been handled differently, if my pregnancy had been handled differently, but because, like I said, he doesn't meet that criteria, it was never externally investigated. So we'll come on to the suing, but I just want to tell you this one thing that happened. But before I tell you about it, I just want to say some of the nurses and midwives that I met were incredible. I had to leave my son there. For a parent that has just given birth, to leave your baby, you don't just leave him with anyone. And even though he wasn't alive, I had to trust them. And you meet these people that there was midwives, I wouldn't have left my baby with them, but there was one midwife who I will cherish in my heart forever, that she took my baby from me. And I'll always be grateful in a bittersweet kind of way. And like I said, I'm very bitter now, but normally only towards certain people, but people grieve differently, but that's beside the point. But yeah, there were some incredible people, but just after, and Shruk, as my friend, I'm going to tell you what they did. And I know, like, my sister was with me as my birthing partner, and I know.
I'm sorry, I'm quiet because I'm very, very angry.
I know, but
yeah, like I'm trying to hold it together.
They just told me that he'd passed away, and we're in one side of the hospital. We've got to go to another part of the hospital. I'm in a sports bra. I got a Nike sports bra on. That's it. They put me on a wheelchair. They gave me like a sheet that isn't like a bed sheet. It's like an A4 piece of paper to cover my fanny, basically. That's it. They put me on this wheelchair and they wheeled me backwards through the corridor. They've just told me my baby had passed away, and I'm sitting there in my Nike bra with my hair all over the place, literally with my head in my heart, with a sheet that just about covers my
fanny.
Your vagine. And in that moment in time, for everything else that happened, as a human being, I couldn't advocate for myself. I couldn't dignify myself. I'd just been told the most life-changing thing that would ever happen to me. My sister's with me. She can't advocate for me because she's also soul destroyed. Like, with my sister, she's my best friend. You can't even really mention my son's name to her without her crying 4 years like down the line. You can imagine her at the time. And not one healthcare professional in that moment said, as they watched me being wheeled backwards through this corridor with nothing but a sheet covering my vagina, said, hold on, this is undignified. Not one person. And for that, when you can forgive, but you can't forget, I will never forget that, because I thought, like,
it's terrible.
It is terrible. And I have seen some incredible things happen in the NHS, and I've also seen people complaining about to not enough sugar in their tea. But that, to me, to not give the respect and dignity that a grieving mother needs.
That has just carried her baby for 9 months.
Just been told their baby is
told, yeah.
And not one person showed me that dignity or respect to say, stop, let's get another wheelchair.
Are we allowed to name and shame the hospital?
I would love to, but I can't.
But you can't. Right,
I can't.
okay.
It's very easy to find out. All you've got to do is type in a little boy in the tux and you'll find the fundraising page.
We will.
Yeah, the fundraising page that after my son died, which I'm sure you know about this actually, after he died, I'd received loads of flowers and I didn't want any flowers anymore. So I said to people, just, we're going to raise money for these cots. They give you these cots to keep the babies cold, that you have to hold them. They're called cooling cots. And so you hold the baby while on these cots. All of a sudden, I know, it's like pads. What? They're like, this is the only way I can explain them. You know,
are you okay to talk about this?
Yeah, of course I am. As long as you don't mind me talking about it.
No.
You know those pads that you put in the freezer for the dogs in the summer? You know, have you seen them, like the cooling pads?
Yeah.
So they basically give you them to put under your baby, but they're like electric to keep the babies cold, because when somebody has passed away, you have to keep them cold, because if they get hot, they start to
smell.
Yeah, like their tissue starts to degrade and they start to preserve time. So I stayed with my son for 2 days, and in that time, these cots got damaged. And so I wanted to raise money to replace those cots.
Right.
To give other parents the opportunities that I had.
Right.
Because as much as I can berate
Do you have to buy them or?
No. They're given to you in the hospital. But they're really flimsy. And so we raised a lot of money. And that was one thing. I was really lucky. Once my son passed away, I was able to give him his own legacy, because in 5 days his name raised 25 grand.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was a bit bittersweet because I got this 25 grand and one of my friends rang me. She said, oh my God, it's 25 grand. And it had gone from like 5 grand and we were like, oh my God, 5 grand. Then 10 grand. And we were like, oh my God, 10 grand to 25 grand. And people were, it had like 2,000 shares. people were sharing it. And my friend rang me. She went, "Oh my God." And in my heart, I just thought, it means nothing to me.
Yeah.
And like, even that it was incredible, but it didn't really, like, it one day I'll appreciate it. And it gave him his legacies. He's got a name away from my abdomen. But yeah, it's still very bittersweet. Very bittersweet. But yeah, we'll talk about suing.
So what happened?
You can't sue because it's not a life.
But I don't understand that. It's negligence regardless.
It is.
Because
so
I'm going to tell you a story as well in a minute.
You can't sue because the baby's not considered a life. So the only thing you can sue for, if anything, is psychological distress. So you have to have a formal diagnosis of physical, and then it's based on how psychologically distressed you are. You can't, because even though the baby is dead, it'd be better off if they were brain dead and had multiple carers a day, because then there's a price that they can put. But even that, you can't put a price on it. Like, if you used to say to me, "I'm going to give you £1 million," I'd go, it ain't enough.
No, it's not.
It
isn't. But surely someone's accountable. Someone needs to be responsible for missing, because that's the whole point. I mean,
so after it all happened, like I said to you, I requested my medical notes, and
let me just say, right, the only, because you're a nurse, you know and understand that you can request medical notes.
Yeah.
You can, and understand what it says on the medical notes. You now understand, and that's only because if you're a nurse. Now we're gonna just go into another situation. My mum's had miscarriages and stillborns, 4 actually, just before my brother, and we were told nothing. I remember my mum saying nothing, like there was nothing. Yet when my little brother was born, she was in hospital and the nurse said, "No, you're not ready for labour." My mum was ready. My mum was there, ready. Without going into great detail, because my mum would literally be like, "Why are you doing why are you talking about my stuff?" But I remember her saying, and she says this all the time, she was ready, and then they'll say, no. Yeah. It's only till one other nurse came in and said, "Get her in now. The baby has turned." Whereas she wanted natural birth and she had to have a cesarean emergency one. Well, before that, she was fine. It's within seconds this happened. But
it's a people service. Like I said, it's down to the people. And like, this has completely changed my whole life. Like I said to you, I've gone through sadness, happiness, anger. Right now I'm very bitter, and it's like that bitter makes me a person that I'm not.
Right.
Like, I become so aggressive and so angry, and it's generally always in one direction, and that direction, it's not actually that person's fault, but that's the closest person to me in this situation. It has destroyed like friendships, it's destroyed relationships that I've had.
I can imagine.
Because you just want someone to say, "I'm so sorry, we should have done better." And like, I got my medical notes and I went through them. I wrote a complaint, and I wrote a complaint as a nurse. Mm-hmm. I was very factual, and I gave the basis of my complaint was, "I do not want a sorry. I do not want you to explain anything for me. What I want you to know is I have gone through my medical notes, and here are 15 outlined improvements that you can make to your service to make sure that this never happens to another parent." And I sent it. It took me a year to write. I sent it to other professionals, and literally they would ring me and be like, "Boy, you're sending them that?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." I sent it to all these people, and I sent it to the hospital, and I got a response 6 months later, and they had just basically overlooked every single point of improvement and just tried to defend themselves with lies. And you got to remember, I have overthought this whole situation. I have played out moment by moment a lot of the things that had happened from a very strategic, logical background, and as an emotional mother, and as a nurse. And so I had to take the emotion out, and I knew that to get my point across to this hospital, I had to take the emotion out. Otherwise, I've been a person that's answered to complaints in the hospitals. And I know if they go a little bit off track and it's about, like I said, somebody's tea's not strong enough, you think, this ain't serious.
Yeah, of course.
I wanted them to be shaking when they read my complaint. And yet all I got back was just offensive shit. It was so offensive. And all it took,
audacity,
the gumption.
Audacity. I've just lost my child because of negligence. And not even that. And again, and I'm going to say this very loosely, I'm not your normal person. I am a nurse, which means I understand terminologies
and processes, and
I'm one of you.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's just put it out there. I belong in the hospital. So I am, I wear the uniform. So it's like that whole thing. If I'm a police officer, treat me like a police officer. Don't treat me like a criminal. Like if I get stopped.
Yeah.
However, I'm a nurse. I'm not saying that you should be treating me differently because I'm a nurse, but
and that's it. You want to be treated with that respect of, look, we're on the same level here. So talk to me like I'm on your level.
Yeah.
Talk to me. And yeah, there were things, and actually, like you said, as a nurse, it destroyed my career because I then went back into nursing, and I thought, no, I can't do this, because I replayed things that I'd done as a nurse and thought, how did I do that? How did I do that to that poor family? How did I do that to that poor person? How did I make that person feel like that day? All because I didn't feel that their problem was important enough.
Yeah.
And so when I went back into nursing, there were a couple of other factors, but psychologically, I just went, as much as I will always be a nurse, my career in the NHS is no more, because the NHS have destroyed my career. They have destroyed that nurse that I wanted to always be. They made me into a nurse that I was not. Like they changed my character in my role because I had to meet the demands of the service. I was doing things that were completely out of character, like moving end of life patients in the middle of the night and things like that, because that's what I was told I had to do. And then all of a sudden, when I was the patient, when my child's life was the other side, I recognized those little things that literally make or break an experience. And when I'm out, I need to restore my happiness. I need to leave this toxic environment, and I need to leave this service that no longer are patient-centred. The biggest problem in the NHS now is that it's no longer about patients. It's about numbers. It's about how quickly we can get this moving. Things are missed purely just because the heart of the NHS has completely gone. And if you had said to me 6 years ago, you won't be in the NHS, in the team that I was working in, the job I loved doing, I used to literally run to work. I loved it. I loved the buzz. I loved all of it. If you had said to me in 6 years' time, Mary, you won't be in the NHS, I would have laughed. I would have gone, what are you talking about? I'm born and bred the NHS. The NHS runs through my blood.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I feel like when I needed the NHS the most, it turned its back on me. And that's not people I've worked with. That was from my experience when I lost my son.
Wow.
And there's been things that have happened since, and there's been other experiences, positive and negative, with the NHS. But for me, this will get you. So I've just lost him. He's sitting next to me on the bed, because they put you in a suite, Matt. So they give you this suite and you go and you spend time with your baby, and they try and make it as human as possible. So there's a double bed and like normal duvet and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And you've got a DVD player that didn't work and stuff like that.
But why do you need a DVD player?
Because people stay there for weeks. I only stayed for 2 days, but you can stay there for weeks. They can even facilitate you going home with your baby. Because they send you home with these cold cots. But that wasn't something I wanted to do. You know, when I was in hospital, Shruk,
What?
Yeah. Do you know I had over 50 visitors coming to meet me and my son? We had like photographers coming in, like things that they did but I've always said they've got such a good bereavement team because they have to. they're so good at what they do because it's a learnt service. Like what they
I'm sorry, I'm just in a little bit of shock. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to
process.
They allow you to go. So
Yeah,
they allow you to go home with your.
you can do. Yeah,
Am I allowed to say this? With your dead child?
yeah. And some people do, and some people they need to do that. Like I remember speaking to somebody, and they had been desperate to. They'd bought their pram. They'd been desperate to put their baby in their pram.
Oh no! See, that would mess me though. That would mess me up.
Well, the midwives let them bring in their pram and they let them walk around the hospital with the baby in the pram. No one knew. And they just let them walk around the hospital for hours and hours and hours.
Isn't that messing them up even more? Wouldn't that mess you up even more? Like, I'm just thinking about, okay, so now I've pushed my baby in a pram. I'm getting angry just saying this. My dead baby in a pram, walking around like I'm happy. I'm the happiest. This is my baby. Hi everyone.
You just want to feel normal though. Like I remember just wanting to feel normal.
And then that gets all taken away from you because then
it's going to get taken away. But you just got to do what feels normal. I remember. I was like desperate to brush his hair. I was desperate to brush his hair, and I was like, I need to brush his hair. Like I've never brushed his hair. I need to brush his hair. And
did you get to brush his hair?
The midwife, she couldn't find a hairbrush or a comb anywhere, so she got me a toothbrush. But here I am. Like when I think about it now, I think that's crazy. But here I am in a hospital with my son, brushing his hair. And if you were to speak to any of my family members that came up, all of them said it was the most natural thing they've ever. I don't think I would have.
I can't even talk. I'm just so there's so much emotions that is going through me right now. I don't know if I'm angry, upset. I want to cry. I want to hug you. There's just so much going through, but I don't know if I could have selfishly.
Yeah, no, it's not selfish.
I wouldn't have been able to come to the. I think that would have disturbed me more than you.
You know,
because I would have been. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I could have done it.
Of course, and. Like I take my hat off to my friends more than they will ever know.
Because well done.
All of my friends, like my support network, I cannot tell you, my support network is incredible.
That's amazing. Imagine some people don't actually have that though.
Yeah, and people don't. And in COVID, people didn't have this. Like this got shut off in COVID. But all of the people, at the bar a few, there was a couple of people that didn't get to come, that didn't meet him, which I will always regret. But everyone that needed to met him, everybody. And my friends all said to me that they would get to the hospital door and they'd like take a deep breath before they come in, and then they'd come in and they'd see me and then they'd see him, and there was tears, like there was laughter, there was more, like there was it weren't like I was sitting there sobbing all the time. And my friends would tell you I had moments of real despair, which I can remember, but a lot of the other time it was just we're just sitting there, who wants a cup of tea? Do you want to hold him? No. Mary, do you want to have a shower? Talking. And there was a lot of silence. But the door didn't stop. There were so many people. There was people coming in that mainly to see if I was all right. My cousin said to me, I know you're okay if the first thing you say to me is something negative about my clothes. And she said that she stood at the door. She took this like deep breath. She was like, all right, I'm coming in. She walked in and I went, what are you dressed as? Ron Weasley? And she was like, I knew you weren't all right, but I knew that this was okay.
Yeah.
And this was how you was coping it.
Yeah, you was handling.
So it's hard.
When did it kick in? Because I know you had, obviously, you had your time 2 days. Well, how did you then turn around and say, right, I'm ready for you to take him now? How did that even come about?
So,
because you go from...
So they gave me a piece of paper, right? Mm-hmm. And on this piece of paper, there was 2 options. Buried, cremated. It's just a piece of paper. They didn't tell me. They just gave me this piece of paper and they said, circle the one that applies. So I kind of knew that we had to start planning to leave. I can't stay here forever. So my dad is very pragmatic. I think that's the right word. Like he's very matter of fact.
Okay.
Like, yeah. And me and my dad are not very me and my dad love each other unconditionally. We're not very emotional towards each other. And I remember I looked at my dad. I was really crying. I said, Dad, what do I do? And my dad said to me, do you want a headstone? I went, yeah. He went, right, he's being buried. And that's how we make decisions, right? So I knew that I had to walk away. And I knew that when I walked away, I couldn't really look back. So I kind of said, right, everybody has to come. Everyone that wants to come has to come before 5 o'clock on the Tuesday. Then I want an hour to myself. My best friend was in Spain, so she flew back. And so she flew back. She got back at 4 o'clock on the Tuesday. So she come in, and then I had time by myself. And then I said, it was all building up to, I knew at 6 o'clock, that was it. And that was it.
So you made that decision, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, 6 o'clock. And I went home. He had obviously had a nursery. Sorry. I sat in it. Yeah, I sat in it for hours. For hours. And then the next day I went, right.
Don't start crying.
No,
it's coming.
I won't.
It's coming.
Yeah. I sat in his nursery for hours. Sorry. I sat in his nursery for hours and hours and hours. And now the world's starting to find out. I've put it on Facebook. I've told people. And so I put it out there. And then the next day I woke up, we dismantled his whole nursery. And I said, today's a new day. And that was it. I started to process the grief. We started planning his funeral. He had to go for a post-mortem. So, even that, they give you a piece of paper that gives you 3 different types of post-mortems, and they're like, pick which one. Well, I don't know.
What did those?
It's
A, B, C?
Mild, medium, severe. Do you want one where they do this? Do you want one where they do this? Or do you want one where they do that? And
how do you know which one to pick?
You don't know, because you've never been in that situation before. It's like picking formula milk. You don't know. So you just have to go with what your gut tells you. And that's what I did. I went with what my gut told me. And I wanted to know. And I didn't want to leave this situation with regret. And that's one thing I always said, I will not have any regret. So I knew that he couldn't be hurt anymore. So I needed answers. So we had to do the full investigation. So my brain kind of said to me, right, this is what we're doing. The same with, there was over 150 people at his funeral, right? It sounds mad, but there was hundreds of people at his funeral. And I refused to go in the church. I outright refused. I would not have a service in the church. And it's October. He was buried on bonfire night.
Oh, wow.
And the priest's like, but what about if it rains? I went, what if it rains? I said, I'll be standing outside because my son will spend the rest of his life in a box. I want him to have some sunshine. I want him to have some breeze. I want him to, I don't want him to be in a church. I'm not overly religious. It doesn't feel natural to me. So let's be outside. Let's just have that moment in the sun for an hour. And she was like, I said, I want music. She was like, it's not a Celine Dion concert. I went, I know, but I want
what I want.
Yeah, I want what I want. And I knew right there and then, that's what I wanted. And there was no change in my mind on a lot of things. One day I woke up and everyone was walking around me with eggshells. Everyone. And I've come downstairs and my mum's there, my dad's there. Everyone's staring at me like, how is she going to be today? I went, all right, I've got to order a skip. And everyone was like, what? And literally, I just took every day as it came. I did some really random things.
I can imagine.
I drank a lot of wine.
I can imagine. I mean, it's understandable.
A lot of wine.
It's understandable.
But yeah, so I feel like we've fully digressed from what we were originally going to talk about. But
yeah, it's been.
But that is the clout of the NHS. It doesn't matter. You can work in the NHS for 10 years. You can work in it for 15, 20 years. When you need them.
When you need them, when you need them.
You're just a number, aren't you? You're just.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just.
Listen, part 2 of this is coming because I think we need a little break for.
Yeah.
To just, I need to pull myself together. I don't know about anybody else. I need to have a moment, take a deep breath. I need to hug my mate Mary off camera. We need to just have a little word to see you're all right. And we'll take part 2 shortly. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's amazing. Can I have a hug?
Yeah.
Can we?
I don't really do hugs.
Well, we're going to have a hug. We're going to have a hug. I think I need one. I think it's for me more than anyone.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
I bet you didn't know my story like that.
No, I didn't. No. How long